Hello, people. Are you recording?
Yes. Yeah, we're all set.
Hello, people of Earth, and hello, Murray Griffin. How are you today?
Very good, thanks, Franziska, Curran, and yeah, a lot of material this week.
Excellent, including what we discussed. Is the headline slightly tacky that you put compost to die for, or is it actually just great PR? Really clever, witty
Yeah,
pun.
I think
Let
it's
us know.
okay. Let us know what you think about headline,
Once
but
you
I
hear the
think it
story. Yeah.
I think it captures the essence of the story. But that's just one of many interesting news
We
items we've
do.
got
We've got
this
a
week.
lot to cover. We've got stopping supermarkets from sending waste food to landfills. We've got protecting kids and families from lead pollution, dangerous lead pollution. We've got celebrating threatened species that live in our cities and replacing fossil gas with green hydrogen at a major facility, and plenty, plenty more. But before we dive in, what's your pick of the week, Murray? What stood out to you? What are you excited about?
Well, Francisca, let me ask you before I talk about my pick of the week, what if
Ooh.
someone examined your home and gave you a certificate that told you what percentage of the time you're likely to be comfortable in it without having to use heating or cooling, and what percentage of the time you're likely to need heating, what percentage you're likely to need cooling? And
Wow.
what if they also told you how much energy each type of appliance in your home is using? For example, your oven and cooktop, your aircon, your lighting, your hot water, and so on. Apart from thinking that they're a very nosy person, would you find that information useful?
Well, you know me, I'd find that extremely useful. And I think I get a sense for it when I close this big balcony door, but I stand in front of it and I can still feel a breeze. And you're like, I've just closed the door. Where's that coming from? I think, you know, I've got an intuitive understanding of these things, but having the data behind them would be, I'd enjoy that. I would find that very interesting. Would it drive decisions and changes? Maybe.
Well, look, I think it would. It would for a lot of people. Some people might just
I
take
think
one
so.
look and scrunch it up and toss it in the bin. But I think many of us would find it really useful. And for that reason, my pick of the week is the new Home Energy Rating Scheme introduced by the
Nice. Yep.
federal government and backed by all states and territories. Now, this
Great.
scheme builds on a previous scheme called the Nationwide House Energy Rating Scheme, or NATHERS. I never quite know how to pronounce that, but I think it's called,
No, me neither.
yeah, you say
Natters.
NATHERS. It was introduced back in 2004 based
Mm.
on CSIRO research. But as well as having a better, easier to remember name, the NATA's replacement, the Home Energy Rating Scheme, does do much more than NATA's ever did. That's because the Home Energy Rating Scheme can assess existing homes and isn't just a tool to assess new built homes. Now, that's a
Mm.
dramatic improvement. And one more thing, at the moment, this is a voluntary assessment process. So, if you want to get it done, you have to book an assessor to come out and look at your home. But there is potential to make this scheme mandatory so that whenever a home is up for lease or up for sale, you have to provide a certificate. So that would mean, for example, if you were looking for a place to rent or you'd
Mm.
found two potential places, you could compare how often you're likely to need to spend money heating and cooling each of them. So you wouldn't just have to rely on standing in front of the balcony door and saying, "Oh, this balcony door is closed, but I can
But
still feel
I'm
a
cold.
breeze. What is going on?" And that would mean you would know how much the place is likely to cost for you to be able to be comfortable in it. And that in turn would
Mm.
encourage property owners to make their properties
Mm.
more energy efficient and comfortable, which would also help to unlock major energy savings and cuts in climate pollution.
That
So,
would be that excellent.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's very exciting. You can see why it's my pick of the week. And here's some audio from a clip about the new scheme. And I'm going to describe this clip as informative but a bit worthy sounding. And for that reason, after that first clip, I'm going to drop in another one, which is on a related topic, which asks the question, why do Australians keep energy rating stickers on our household appliances? So, okay, first up, the home energy ratings clip. Here we go.
Our homes can make a big difference in how we live, often in ways we barely notice. We feel it on cold mornings, hot nights, and in what it costs to keep our homes comfortable. But how do we really know how well our home is doing its job? That's where a home energy rating can help. A home energy rating measures how much energy your home needs to stay comfortable throughout the year. It looks at how your home is built, how it handles heat and cold, and how efficiently key systems operate. A home energy rating gives you the power to choose. It provides a clear, impartial picture of how efficiently your home uses energy and what options to consider should you choose to make improvements.
And now the other clip about Australians leaving energy rating stickers on their household appliances. It's better if you watch it, I've got to admit, but you get the gist of it from the audios.
I saw a video from this American woman on TikTok saying that all Australians leave their energy rating sticker on all of their appliances, and I thought that can't be true. What does she know? What a load of shit. And just to double check, just come into the laundry here and oh, what's that? Fuck. I hate when an American is right as much as the next person. Why are we doing this? Why is this a national what? Not gonna take off though. Just in case.
What a great pick of the week, Murray. I think that would be such a wonderful initiative to increase energy literacy in the general public. And I would also love if this happened, this sort of rating happened on rental properties so people could understand it before they move in. And it also, yeah, like you said, incentivizes homeowners beyond
Yeah,
just yeah, those who live in their
definitely.
homes. Mm.
Yes. So, okay, Francisco, what is your pick of the week?
Well, my pick of the week is that in big news last week, the manufacturing company Orica confirmed that it will proceed to use green hydrogen produced from water and renewable energy to help make ammonia. And that's happening close to its Kooragang Island site in Newcastle, where they will install an electrolyzer, which is the key unit that uses the renewable energy to produce the hydrogen. And then that hydrogen will be pumped to their facility to produce their ammonia. And that will reduce the amount of natural gas, of fossil gas that Orica uses at that site to produce ammonia by 7.5%. So this is one of the first green hydrogen productions, and it's going to be one of the largest in the Southern Hemisphere once it's operating, I think early 2029. So I found that pretty exciting. They've been backed by the Australian government about $500 million and $45 million from the New South Wales government to get that across the line. So it's just come up to what they call final investment decision on the project, and I look forward to seeing it evolve over the coming year.
Yeah, and it doesn't replace all the fossil gas, but it's still going to make a big difference, isn't it?
So yeah, that's right. The project will reduce emissions by around 35,000 tons, which is equivalent to about 50,000 homes off fossil gas, and about equivalent to taking 26,500 cars off the road. So that's a reasonable reduction that we can see from this project, which is very
Yeah.
exciting.
It is exciting. Now, I'm gotta say I'm a big fan of Orica because
Me
it's a
too.
big emitter,
Yeah.
and they do incredibly innovative projects. So this is a groundbreaking project, and also, like, was it just 2 episodes ago, we talked about another amazing project
I
that
think
they're
it was
doing.
my pick of the week.
It
Yeah,
wa
a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, you were an Orica junkie, Franziska Curran. It's just,
Well,
um
I'm a safeguard junkie, and I love to
yeah,
I love to point out, the facilities that are doing great within this. So it's
yes.
exciting to see. Yeah.
Yeah, because last episode we talked about how Orica was involved in a project to capture carbon dioxide and turn it into solid carbonates that could be used to make other things. That was also an amazing project, wasn't it?
Also very cool. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we are following them closely, aren't we?
Yeah,
Not
we're
quite
sort of
stalking them,
we're
but
stalking Orica. The only thing I worry about is
professional.
there can't be much space left on Kooragang Island. By the time you put in this the MCI, carbonates plant and a bit of green hydrogen infrastructure, that island must be pretty full by now.
Well, we've also got a little clip from Orica about the project, and we'll put the clip into the show notes. But here's some audio from it.
Orica is taking its place as a first mover in the renewable hydrogen market. Supported by government funding, we are progressing plans for a renewable hydrogen hub. The hub will deliver a safe, reliable, and commercial scale renewable hydrogen supply chain, in the Newcastle Industrial and Port Precinct, and it will bring our vision for low-carbon ammonia manufacturing to life. Renewable hydrogen is produced via electrolysis, using recycled water and grid-connected electricity. The Hunter Valley Hydrogen Hub project is Australia's fastest credible pathway to low-carbon ammonia export. It will help Australia decarbonise and secure sustainable sovereign manufacturing, while creating new jobs, energy sources and industries as the world transitions away from fossil fuels. Because the world demands and deserves a sustainable future.
All right. Shall we move on with the quiz question for the week, Murray?
Yes, our quiz question for the week is, what is so special about New South Wales Warrumbungle National Park in central western New South Wales, apart from its spectacular landscape?
Surely that's a trick question, Murray. Surely there are many special things about it.
I'm sure
But I
there
look
are.
forward to
Yeah, I'm,
to hearing
I'm
the
sure there are. But this particular thing, this particular aspect made me want to go there very much.
oh,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Mm.
Maybe we need an Earthed on Tour episode
Yeah, we
in
could. That's right.
Warrumbungle National Park with birds chirping in the background.
Yeah.
All right, on to the rest of the news. And first up, there's a fair bit happening at the moment on efforts to detect, manage, and remove invasive species that harm native plants and animals, farm animals and crops, and sometimes human health. Efforts to deal with these biosecurity threats are being ramped up in a few different ways. In New South Wales, the state government is inviting people to have their say on a proposed new biosecurity strategy. The draft strategy points out that New South Wales is now having to deal with a range of threats, including red imported fire ants, which are one of the world's worst invasive animals. Fire ants were detected at 4 locations in New South Wales between November 2023 and July 2025, triggering an emergency each time to destroy their nests. Other pest species include the brown marmorated stink bug, which is as nasty as it sounds. And there's also American foul brood, which is an imported infectious disease affecting honeybees. And there's also the varroa mite, a parasite that found its way to Australia from overseas and is also a damaging honeybee pest.
I've got to say that those names are kind of giveaways. These things are
Foul
terrible.
brood. Varroa mite. Anyway, all up, there are more than 340 weed and 40 pest animal species in New South Wales that are causing harm to the state's economy, environment, and communities. The state government says that the state needs a new biosecurity strategy because the biosecurity risks facing New South Wales are increasing in frequency, severity, and complexity. For example, increasing global trade increases the risk of invasive pests spreading in Australia. And climate change is altering growing conditions, which can leave the state more vulnerable to biosecurity risks. Climate change-related stress on farm animals and plants and on native species can also increase their vulnerability, making them more susceptible to invasive diseases and pests.
At the national level, there is also a biosecurity review underway that is being led by the federal government. As well, the federal government last week introduced a proposed law to Parliament which aims to improve biosecurity arrangements.
And Queensland is getting in on the act as well. It's just appointed 9 new biosecurity ambassadors who will travel around different parts of the state to raise awareness on the importance of biosecurity. And Queensland last week also convened a honeybee emergency industry roundtable to talk about what can be done to protect the state's honeybee industry from the varroa mite. And the Queensland government points out that this isn't just about making sure they've got enough honey on supermarket shelves. Plant pollination by honeybees is essential to broader food security, supporting crops worth around $12.9 billion each year. And I quote, making a strong and sustainable beekeeping industry critical to the future of Australian agriculture.
In New South Wales, the state's EPA has announced new funding to help communities deal with lead contamination caused by long-term mining. And lead contamination is a major problem because high levels of lead in the body can affect the brain, the nervous system, blood, kidneys, and the reproductive system. And it's especially bad for children who are exposed to lead. The main lot of funding is a record $37.3 million to help protect children and families in Broken Hill from lead exposure. Broken Hill has one of the most significant legacy lead contamination problems in Australia. Data from 2025 shows 35% of children aged 1 to 5 and 56% of Aboriginal children of the same age have blood lead levels above national
Mm.
health guidelines, those are terrible
So alarming.
statistics. Yeah. Now,
Horrible.
as background to this, New South Wales Chief Scientist and Engineer earlier this year released a report on lead contamination in Broken Hill, which said action to prevent exposure to lead in the area had slowed in recent years. The Chief Scientist's report recommended stronger public health initiatives supported by a more comprehensive education program. The report also recommends a stronger focus on remediating lead in soil and on continuing to reduce lead emissions. And in case you're wondering, the reason it's a problem in Broken Hill is that mining of the area's very large lead, zinc, and silver ore deposits has gone on for years, and that's resulted in extensive lead contamination.
As well as providing more money to Broken Hill, the state government will provide $1 million to support families in Captain's Flat in the New South Wales southern tablelands who have also been affected by lead contamination from mining in the area. The government says the money will be used to fund practical steps to help reduce lead exposure risks in the Captain's Flat area.
So, do you spend a lot of time on the Great Barrier Reef, Franziska?
Oh, not as much as I'd like, but I've
Yeah.
visited a few times and I'm just in love, in awe.
Yes, absolutely extraordinary. And because it is so extraordinary, it's been listed as a World Heritage Site by the UN since
Mm.
1981. Now, for many years, the UN has been considering whether to officially list the reef as a World Heritage property that's in danger because of the environmental and climate pressures that it's under. These pressures include polluted water flowing off the land and into reef waters, and climate change, which heats marine waters and causes coral bleaching. But now the UN body that assesses whether World Heritage sites are properly protected has decided that it doesn't need to be listed as a site in danger, at least at this stage. And it's interesting to see why they've come to that conclusion. In part, it's because of the reforms to Australia's main environment law, known as the EPBC Act, which will impose tougher restrictions on land clearing near waterways in Great Barrier Reef catchments. The UN body says it strongly welcomed those changes, which is a little bit awkward for the Queensland government since it hates those same changes. I don't know. What do you think, Francisco, about this one?
So the UN has decided not to put it in danger, or classify it as in danger, and the government's happy about that.
Yeah. And this is something that both parties, when they're in government, they have each lobbied very hard not to have the reef declared as being in danger.
What are the implications once it does trigger that? Because I'm sure some people would have wanted that happen because it might force more pressure to do more to protect it.
Yeah, exactly. And would, I guess, raise the profile of the need to act on
Mm.
things like water quality problems and climate change. I'm not exactly sure. I think it would have meant that, and certainly environment groups were campaigning for it to be listed as being in
In
danger.
danger.
Yeah, I think it would have
Mm.
meant that there'd be stronger action on water quality for a start, and it would have helped to
Mm.
make the case for stronger action on climate change. I guess my attitude is, well, there's 29 World Heritage listed reefs, coral reefs, and I reckon you should just list them all as being in danger
In
because,
danger.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that is the reality. And it just seems very strange to, say that the reef is not in danger when last year it experienced its sixth mass bleaching event since 2016.
And we'll pop a link to the UN decision in the show notes.
And here's a bit of audio from a Great Barrier Reef Foundation video clip that talks about coral bleaching.
People, when they go and visit the reef, and millions of people have their first dive on the reef every year, it's one of the most visited places on the planet. They might swim over a tennis court size of coral reef. The Great Barrier Reef is the size of 70 million football fields. It's the largest living thing on the planet.
Coral reefs are a really important and complex ecosystem that is really the foundation for healthy oceans.
There's different layers of coral, there's different species of coral. There's a lot of different variety of fish life and animal life.
Fundamentally, they're a home. They're a home and a critical habitat for a quarter of all marine life on the planet. So if we lose coral reefs, it is a domino effect of ecosystem failure. For centuries, corals have been able to heal themselves. What's happening with the intensity of climate change impacts? They're so severe and they're so frequent, there is no longer a window of recovery. So when an event happens that wipes out half the coral reefs, it's too much for the inherent resilience of the ecosystem to repair herself.
For us, for Trishalaners, it's that circular balance that we have with nature. Yeah, we believe that we are them and they are us. When we're talking about things like coral bleaching or sea temperature rising and creating that imbalance in the system, that stops a lot of our sea life coming back. So if our reefs aren't in check, it sort of throws a lot of the other balances out.
Corals have a really close partnership with a special type of algae called zooxanthellae. This algae lives in the tissues of the coral, and just like plants, it photosynthesizes. And the product of that photosynthesis is food for the coral. And it also gives the coral its beautiful color. When corals get stressed from things like ocean warming, they expel their algae and then they turn white. And that's what we call coral bleaching.
If we can solve this, our most complex problem as Australians, and we can share that knowledge that we can do this, that gives hope to all other ecosystems on the planet. That we as humans can solve the problems that we have created.
In an Australian first, new requirements have kicked in New South Wales that require big supermarkets and large catering businesses that prepare or provide food to separate food waste from general waste so that it can be kept out of landfills. These new requirements are part of the state government's efforts to keep organic waste out of landfill. Keeping organics out of landfill is important for two reasons. Firstly, Sydney's landfills are filling up very fast, and the state needs to keep as much waste out of them as possible. And secondly, organic wastes like food waste release climate-polluting gases when they rot in landfill. Large supermarkets must also now track their food donation volumes as a way of encouraging them to distribute more edible surplus food to charities and people in need rather than sending it off to landfill. And here's a bit of audio from a clip about the changes. You'll hear New South Wales Environment Minister Penny Sharp and a speaker from Coles and a speaker from food rescue organisation Second Bite. And you'll hear them mention two things, the waste levy and FOGO. The waste levy is a fee that companies have to pay when they send waste to landfill, and FOGO stands for Food and Garden Organics. And here's the clip.
New South Wales's best recycling initiative starts today. It's about making sure that all of our food waste is either turned into compost or given to the people who need it. Starts today, best in the country.
So last year, we diverted 88% of solid waste from landfill, which is over 100,000 tonnes of food being donated. We work with our food rescue partners at Second Bite.
Second Bite is a food rescue organisation that works alongside Coles and charities nationally to rescue surplus food to make sure that it goes out to community and those that are in need. So whatever gets passed on is usually in really good quality, and it's meant for families to be able to eat.
For businesses that set up FOGO systems, it's actually cheaper for them. It means they don't have to pay the waste levy. It means that the waste goes into creating something fantastic like compost. It also means that it's better for the environment.
The federal government is offering grants to up to 500 community sports clubs to upgrade their facilities to be more energy efficient and climate change resilient. Clubs can apply for these Game On grants of between $25,000 up to $100,000 to fund the upgrades. We'll drop the link into the show notes.
If you're interested in water and wetlands, and let's face it, who wouldn't be? Then there's an exciting restoration project proposed in Victoria along some of the Murray River floodplains. The restoration project, proposed by Lower Murray Water, would restore more natural water flows to about 1,750 hectares of high ecological value Murray River floodplain. And it's just taken another step towards getting underway with a government planning committee about to examine the project. The restoration project would install infrastructure on Crown land that would make it possible to conduct managed water events that would mimic the timing and scale of natural high flow events in the area. And this would support the long-term health of floodplain-dependent plants, water birds, fish, vegetation, and frogs. And those native species include more than 72 rare or threatened species which are found in the area. Here's some audio about one part of the project in the Benwell Forest, and we'll put the link in the show notes. You'll hear the speaker mention the VMFRP, and that stands for the Victorian Murray Floodplain Restoration Project, which is the name of the entire project.
The Guttram and Benwell Forest Floodplain Restoration Project is located on the northern Victorian Murray River floodplain between Kundruk and Mile. Benwell State Forest is a working forest, one of the few remaining river redgum floodplain systems in Victoria, and has significant ecological importance. This project will enable water for the environment to be delivered efficiently and effectively to give the floodplains the water they need while keeping irrigation water in the community. A proposed underground pump station on the western side of the forest will work with regulators and pipes to deliver water from the Murray to semi-permanent wetlands, 6 to 8 years in every 10. The diversity of habitat provided by the wetlands will support numerous water birds and wetland fauna, providing shelter, nesting habitat and food sources. This includes habitat for threatened species such as Australasian bittern and growling grass frogs. The water, either from high river flow events or pumped, will give trees a much-needed drink and support the iconic flood-dependent understory, which requires flooding to complete its life cycle. Once water for the environment has done its job, the infrastructure will allow water to flow out of the forest and back into the Murray, providing some of the best fish food in the basin. The Guttram and Benwell project is just one of 9 ecologically significant floodplains to be restored as part of the VMFRP. This project is a major step towards restoring the floodplain's health and protecting it for future generations to experience and enjoy.
And here's a good news story. Venice Energy is seeking New South Wales government approval to install a proposed grid-scale battery called the Sunshine Estate Battery, and it will be located off Wine Country Drive in the New South Wales Hunter region. Sunshine Estate, Wine Country Drive, it all sounds delightful, doesn't it, Francisco?
It sounds so delightful, Murray. If they're not careful, it might become like a filming location. It's a new movie industry,
Yeah.
or like a
Forget the Warren Bungles. Let's go and see the Sunshine Estate Big Battery. The
Earth on tour. Anyway, go on.
The battery will be located within the Hunter Central Coast Renewable Energy Zone, and it will support the grid at times of low wind and solar dispatch, and that reduces the need for new gas power plants. And you might be wondering, well, how much land do these things cover? Well, the answer is not very much. In total, the project site covers an area of about 12 hectares, which is roughly the size of about 5 footy ovals. There's already dense vegetation around the site, but screening vegetation will be added. So it's definitely not going to be an eyesore if you're doing a scenic drive along Wine Country Drive. And the completed project will have the capability to power about 190,000 households for about 4 hours, which is amazing.
Amazing. Next up, a very unusual proposed law that's about composting has gone into the New South Wales Parliament. It was introduced by independent Alex Greenwich, and it's a proposed law that would allow people to say they want something other than burial or cremation when they die. Alex Greenwich calls the process natural organic reduction, and it's basically speeded up human body composting. And what it does is rapidly turn a human body into about 110 kilograms of compost. And apparently it's already legal in 14 US states and 1 German state. Greenwich calls it an environmentally friendly alternative to burial or cremation, which doesn't require caskets, coffins, or land for burial. And the compost can be used to plant a memorial tree or donated for soil or bush regeneration projects. The proposed law is called the Natural Organic Reduction Bill, and it would amend the Public Health Act to make the composting of human remains legal. What do you think about this one, Murray?
I'm going to say I think people should have this option. It's sort of like the ultimate in rewilding, isn't it? Where, uh,
What a
I,
lovely
yeah.
framing.
So, no, I'm all for it. Although I have to say I would prefer something different, Francisca. I think that I
Tell
would
me.
like I'm thinking in the basement of the Earthed podcasting
Oh,
studio,
God.
a marble
A tomb.
mausoleum with an embossed microphone at one end and an embossed pair of AirPods at the other end. And can you guess? I'd have a single phrase on the plaque at the side. Can you guess what that phrase might be?
Nah, hit me with a Murray. What would the phrase be? I'm walking down the marble stairs. I'm seeing the microphone, the earpods. I'm seeing
So let me give you a one-word clue. The one word that'll be in this phrase is cinnamon. So do you want to tell people what the phrase is and why?
There's a tongue twister that we were talking about several weeks ago. That's brilliant, Murray. And I'm really glad that tongue twister from like a month and a half ago really stuck with you.
Yes,
I'm really glad it's gone deep into
it
your
has. No,
into your
it's it's
soul.
there.
There's an inevitable limit when there's cinnamon in it.
Yes.
There's an inevitable limit when there's cinnamon in it. It was Jacob Jeffries that did a wonderful little reel using that tongue twister that will live on
So to speak. Yes.
permanently in our
Yes.
hearts and
Um,
minds. Live on.
and it's a great tongue twister
Oh,
for if you're starting
no.
up your own podcast. It's a tongue twister that you can practice.
If you're leveling up your already existing wonderful
Yeah,
podcast,
yeah,
you can use
that's
this
right.
tongue
That's
twister.
right. Anyway, let's move on. So I
Wow.
think
Let's move
because
on.
we're both in favour of this bill, aren't we? I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say that it opens a can of worms, you know, culturally about what's normal, what's spiritually okay. It's probably gonna have a lot, it's gonna evoke a lot of emotion. And I guess I'm also thinking about different methods to this, and I've heard of, mushrooms to accelerate decomposition, and I've heard, and worms as an example. So it's a very, I'm in a fan of it, and I also understand how complex
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
for people, but it's not like everyone's mandatorily gonna be composting,
No,
it's a
no,
voluntary thing.
no.
So,
So
yep.
maybe we should get back more onto the straight and narrow of
Moving on.
of our content.
Yes.
Moving on to our next item. And every year, Australia's Climate Change Authority prepares advice for the government and the Parliament on Australia's progress towards meeting its emissions reduction targets and reaching net zero emissions of climate pollution. The authority has now started preparing this year's advice and has just kicked off public consultation on what should be included in it. One thing we know it will include is advice on the review of Australia's safeguard mechanism, which is Australia's main policy to gradually reduce the amount of climate pollution released by factories, mines, and landfills. And the authority's discussion paper for its progress advice has some interesting questions in it about the safeguard.
Yeah, that's right, Murray. So in particular, it asks whether the safeguard mechanism should do more to encourage manufacturing facilities, mines, and landfills to reduce their own on-site emissions, and whether they should have less leeway in terms of use of carbon credits, or how they can use carbon credits to offset their emissions. The authority will also advise on how quickly these facilities should be required to reduce their emissions in the future. The reason that that's being considered is because Australia now has a new emissions reduction target for 2035, and that could well result in a change for the rate of reduction in emissions from industry. The Climate Change Authority will also provide advice on opportunities to reduce methane emissions from coal and fossil gas operations. And as we've discussed before, methane is a particularly powerful greenhouse gas, much more powerful than carbon dioxide. So cutting methane emissions is really important.
Now, interestingly, the Climate Change Authority's discussion paper also specifies 2 areas where it currently thinks a lot more could be done that would cut emissions and boost economic prosperity. One is doing more so that households can adopt lower emissions technologies and reduce their energy bills. The authority says, and this is a quote, there are strong signs of progress. More than 4.3 million Australian households have installed rooftop solar, and more than 450,000 of them have battery systems. But it says many households are continuing to use gas, and it points out that household gas connections on Australia's east coast have increased by more than 3% since 2022. According to the authority, if those additional households, presumably new builds, had been fully electrified instead of getting gas connections, that could have reduced cumulative Australian emissions since 2022 by about 1 million tonnes.
The other area that the Climate Change Authority says needs more attention is clean industry projects such as green iron, low carbon liquid fuels such as sustainable aviation fuel, and critical minerals. It acknowledges that these projects are large and complex to get up and running, and it says one important way forward is to provide stronger signals that these products, like green steel for example, will be in demand. The authority points out that governments can help to do this through measures including undertaking to buy some of the materials for themselves for use in public projects and by mandating the use of these clean commodities and fuels. For example, several places, including the EU, the UK, and Singapore, already have a sustainable aviation fuel mandate. These mandates require a small and gradually increasing percentage of avgas to be made up of sustainable aviation fuel that is made from energy crops or wastes.
And a quick but important note. As we flagged last episode, the National EPA opened its doors for business last Wednesday, and it's a huge achievement to have this up and running. Here's Labor MP Kate Thwaites talking about what it means.
The more time you spend in nature, the more you appreciate it and want to protect it. I certainly had that feeling when I visited our beautiful Yarra Flats with Minister for the Environment Murray Watt. And that's why I'm so proud that the Labor government has established Australia's National Environment Protection Agency for the very first time. It's an independent watchdog that will help make sure our laws are enforced, improve transparency, and help protect the places Australians care about. It's a really important step forward in protecting our environment and one we should all be proud of.
And it's worth noting that Kate Thwaites would be a very busy woman at the moment because she is also the government's special envoy for climate change adaptation and resilience.
Now, everyone's a fan of rooftop solar panels, but there can sometimes be a bit of pushback of people wanting to install them on houses or in areas where there are heritage protections in place. In Victoria, currently, the default option is that you need a planning permit if you want to put rooftop solar on your home in a position that will be visible from the street if it's in an area that is subject to a heritage overlay. Now, the Victorian government is asking people to have their say on a proposed change that would make the default option that no planning permit is required. This would simplify the process of installing rooftop solar for people living in these areas. However, councils would still have the option of introducing a requirement in their area that you need a planning permit.
There's been a lot of talk about the really weak tax arrangements that apply to LNG gas projects. And just before the federal government handed down its budget in May, a Senate committee issued a report which had some really interesting recommendations in it, although the various parties couldn't agree on what exactly should happen. But there's also been a lot of talk about the fact that a handful of big mining companies each year get billions of dollars in rebates for using diesel fuel. Critics, and there are plenty of them, argue that this tax benefit that the mining companies get for using diesel deters them from purchasing electric mine trucks and generally electrifying their operations. Last week, the Greens proposed a Senate committee inquiry that will look into this so-called fuel tax credits scheme. The inquiry would look at things including whether the fuel tax credit scheme is preventing decarbonisation of the mining industry, and it would look at whether it could be reformed so that these companies play more of a role in cutting carbon pollution. And one more thing that's important to note, the inquiry wouldn't look at cutting diesel fuel tax credits that go to farmers. It would only be focused on mining companies. The Greens aren't the only crossbench politicians who want some action on this. Here's Senator David Pocock talking about the issue.
You may have seen this post about the billions of dollars of fuel tax credits we give to big miners. And it's in the news again with the biggest miner on the planet, BHP, being given an estimated $622 million last financial year in fuel tax credits. This makes no sense when the budget is under pressure and Australians are struggling. The industry argues they shouldn't pay fuel excise because they don't use public roads. But fuel excise doesn't go to building or maintaining roads. It just goes to consolidated revenue, the big pool of revenue that the government uses. We should stop giving hundreds of millions of dollars of diesel rebates to miners, but continue to allow farmers and others to receive the rebate. As far as I'm concerned, the biggest miners in the world can afford to pay the fuel excise just like you and I.
Australia's Threatened Species Commissioner, Dr. Fiona Fraser, has a great Facebook presence. And along with depressing posts about H5 bird flu, she's also got other posts that are much more upbeat. And in one of those posts, she said, yes, we need to protect habitat outside cities, but we should also recognise the threatened species that you can find in our cities. In fact, she says there are 39 threatened species, 37 plants and 2 animals, that are only found either in cities or in big towns that have populations of greater than 10,000 people. And these 2 animals include one that we talked about in a recent episode of Earth, which is Perth's western swamp tortoise, which even has its own children's book called Westie. One of the other species that's pretty much only found in urban areas is Brisbane's angle-stemmed myrtle, which is a beautiful small rainforest tree that looks a bit like a lily-pilly. It's very rare, and unfortunately, it's also at risk of an imported fungal disease called myrtle rust, which just goes to show, as we were talking about earlier, the importance of having strong biosecurity measures in place. Anyway, in the next few weeks, Commissioner Fraser is going to feature individuals and communities who are leading on-the-ground action to protect urban threatened species, so keep an eye out for that. And finally, here's the answer to our quiz question. What's so special about New South Wales' Warrumbungle National Park in central western New South Wales, apart from its spectacular landscape? Well, the Warrumbungle National Park, which is celebrating its 10th birthday, is Australia's only dark sky park. It's near the Siding Spring Observatory, which has Australia's largest telescope, and it's renowned for its exceptional starry nights, stargazing opportunities. And a lot of people go there for what's called astrotourism. And you won't be bored in the day either, because the park has some amazing large lava rises that you can hike around. And other parts of Australia are also looking at getting involved in astrotourism. The Northern Territory government has just announced grants for tourism experiences, and 2 of them involve astrotourism. One is Earth Sanctuary, a virtual reality space adventure experience combining astronomy, dark skies tourism, and Indigenous sky stories. And the other is by Adventure Tours Australia, which will focus on First Nations astronomy and Western science.
It does sound amazing. I wouldn't mind doing,
Amazing.
I wouldn't mind doing an astrotourism road trip. I think that would be pretty fantastic.
Any sort of track changes episode we can do in Warrumbungle. So
I know, we need an
astrotourism
excuse.
episode.
We could interview some of the scientists, some of the astronomers at Siding Springs. Yes. That's it for today. You're all up to date. 2 more people are crucial to making this podcast happen. Sophie Sedaris and the co-founder of the Earth's news service, Chris Dancy. And if you enjoyed this episode, please show your appreciation by following the show. And if you feel like it, give us some stars on your pod listening platform. When Spotify and Apple see stars, or YouTube sees a thumbs up, they're more likely to put out pod in front of other people. If you're able to go a step further, you can make a small monthly contribution to help us cover our costs by becoming a supporter via our website, which you can find at earthed.au. We'll use any funds we receive to cover the costs of things like production, editing, and distribution. And if there's any left over, it can go towards that beautiful marble sarcophagus we talked about earlier. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.
See you next week.